Excuse me. You down for the weekend?
Just down for the match, actually.
You look marvelous.
Do I really?
Yes, you do.
Oh, Dad, you are sweet. Nobody ever tells me that.
I don't know why not. It's off to work. Prince of Wales doesn't like to be kept waiting.
Good luck.
Oh.
Can you see him over there? Yeah, there he is.
Very nice.
Terribly. Well, come on, I'm moving on this.
Hello.
Hello.
Great match, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Do you come here often?
Not very.
Would you like a cigarette?
No, thanks.
Are you a film star? Then you must be royalty.
Hardly.
Oh, how silly of me. Of course, you're with Prince Charles. My father's his polo manager.
Yes, I know.
Sarah Ferguson.
Diana Spencer.
It must be awfully exciting for you. Tell me, is it a bother having detectives around you all the time?
It is a little bit.
Sarah Ferguson and Diana Spencer became fast friends. They often met for lunch or a movie. And when they did, they were trailed by the usual rat pack of photographers.
Yeah, always, yeah. So, where did you meet him?
It was in the middle of a field, actually.
Really?
Yes, at Sandringham. I tagged along with my sister for the weekend. I was having a perfectly miserable time, feeling sorry for myself, when I looked up suddenly, and there he was, walking with those loping strides of his, collar up, hands in pockets. It was just after his uncle Dickie was killed in that IRA bombing. And he looked so sad and lonely. And I just thought, here's a man who needs someone to love him and take care of him. And I said so. It was an impulsive thing. I didn't mean me, actually. I just meant someone.
What did he say?
He just looked at me and smiled. There I was in these horrid boots, which were covered in mud, with my hair tied back, looking perfectly dreadful. Anyway, he invited me back the following weekend, and that was the beginning of it.
It must be terribly exciting.
It is, most of the time.
What do you do?
Do?
Well, do you go to the theatre, cinema, that type of thing?
Not very much of that, actually. I spent a fair amount of time watching him fish.
You don't.
Any luck? Lovely day, isn't it?
Quite.
Well, just how many kindergartens are there in the West End of London? Yeah, well, do try and get back to me today, will you? I'd hate to be scooped by the Mail on this.
Yes.
This is what I have. Her name is Diana Spencer. Lady Diana Spencer. Father Earl Spencer, mother Frances Fermoy. They were divorced in 1967. She remarried Peter Shand Kidd, wealthy sheep farmer, lives in Argyllshire. He remarried Rain Cartland, Barbara Cartland's daughter.
Ah,
Family home is Althorpe House in Norfolk. They have land, money, and connections.
is this just another one of Charles's conquests?
No, I don't think so. This one's been chosen with breeding in mind. She's 19, very attractive, demure, and apparently the Queen approves. The Spencers have mingled with the Windsors for years. The Earl was an equerry to George VI, and Diana's sister Jane is married to the Queen's private secretary.
What does she do, this Lady Diana Spencer?
She's a kindergarten teacher.
Oh, exotic.
Well, Charles appears to be quite besotted with her.
Come on, we've heard that before. Remember Camilla?
Yeah, well, he waited too long with that. This time I've a feeling he may strike while the iron is hot, so to speak.
Let's hope so. After all, how many non-Catholic virgins are there left in Europe?
I'm trying to get a decent photograph.
Jeffrey, if anyone can, you can.
Come on, 2 feet. 5, 8, right, and back again. There we are. Now you think you go? Okay, because I think you're getting quite good now.
It wasn't your fault. These people do anything to get a photo. Mustn't let it worry you. I'll speak to my press secretary and see if he can't have a word with some of the journalists.
That's very kind of you.
And I don't want these vultures bothering you. That skirt you're wearing,
That skirt?
did you know you could see right through it, practically?
No, I wasn't aware of that.
The sun was behind you. You do have magnificent legs, you know.
Thank you.
Charles took Diana down to Sussex to meet an old girlfriend of his.
And how is your father these days?
Quite well, actually.
I adore Althorpe House. It is the classic English country estate. Do you get down often?
Not often enough.
Well, now that your sister and you are both in London, I suppose he comes to you.
No, he prefers the country, really.
Scone?
No, thank you.
You sure? They're quite good.
No, I'm not very hungry.
She hardly eats anything at all during the day. And at about 4 o'clock, she gets absolutely ravenous and wolfs down an entire steak and kidney pie, don't you?
Oh, stop being so critical, Charles, really. It gets awfully peremptory. Just ignore him, that's what I do.
Oh, well, if you're both going to ignore me, I think I'll pop down to the stables and have a look at your new mare.
You mustn't let him upset you. He tends to be an old woman sometimes, really. I think that's what happens when a man gets into his 30s without marrying.
I suppose so.
Now, tell me what you're doing with yourself these days.
I'm working in a kindergarten in Pimlico.
Really? You must like children, then.
I adore them.
What about horses?
Not very much, frankly. I fell off and broke my arm when I was 10, and I've been terrified of them ever since.
Oh, what a shame. Bit of advice, if I may. Try to develop a liking for them. The entire family adores horses, especially the Queen. I mean, she can go on for hours talking about her horses. How about the hounds?
No, not very much. I don't enjoy hunting either.
Oh, dear. We must do something about that, mustn't we?
right? You sound awful.
I had a dreadful afternoon. Charles and I drove down to Sussex to see an old friend of his. And I had the distinct impression I was being looked over, almost as if I were a horse he was considering buying. She asked me all these questions, and I suddenly realised that Charles and I have almost nothing in common.
But you do love him, don't you?
Desperately. I just wish...
What?
Oh, Sarah, am I making a terrible mistake?
How can you make a mistake if you're in love?
I don't know. Dear Sarah, I've been up here at Balmoral with Charles since Friday. The weather's been perfectly dreadful, grey and misty, and so chilly you'd never know it was only September. They're all off shooting, which I managed to escape by saying that I was feeling unwell. Charles was very cross with me. This morning after breakfast, we had our first big row. I told him that I thought blood sports were cruel and that I didn't care to participate in them. After all, is there anything terribly amusing about pursuing a defenceless fox over the moors until he's prostrate from exhaustion, and then looking on as a pack of dogs rips him to shreds? I'm afraid I've mucked things up rather badly. They may never have me back. Am I forgiven?
It was my fault, really.
No, it was my fault.
We're going to have another argument about whose fault it was.
No.
Drink up, everyone. We're losing another commoner. Oh, polluting good English stock with his Germans from the House of Windsor. Our good friend Di, dressed to kill, courtiers quaking in her wake as she discos through the corridors of beauty with her Walkman and high-heel tennis shoes. Her hand grasped firmly round the royal sceptre.
The royal what?
Sceptre? He has got one, hasn't he? God save the Princess of Wales. God save our gracious Di, long live our noble Di. God save our Di. Ba, 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 ba.
He told me to think it over. He said it was a very important decision. But I said yes straight away. Was that very foolish of me?
Of course not, if you know your own heart.
I'm terribly fond of him. He's really quite good and kind, and so intelligent. He reads in French and in Arabic, and he's interested in just about everything from organic gardening to architecture. Of course, he'd kill me if he found out I was telling you this. He's a very private person. It's all just happening so quickly. And then there's the age difference. 13 years is a bit much, don't you think?
I don't think it matters at all, as long as you love each other.
Do you know what he said to the interviewer when she asked if he was in love? He said, yes, whatever that means.
Men have trouble talking about their feelings, especially on the BBC.
There's so much pressure on him not to make a mistake. When you're the Prince of Wales, you only get one chance. And if you make the wrong choice...
Has a date been discussed?
The end of July.
The Abbey?
No, it's not big enough.
Not big enough?
It only holds 1,800 people.
On July the 29th, 1981, Sarah Ferguson and her father were among the 2,400 people invited to St. Paul's Cathedral for the royal wedding. One can only imagine what went through Sarah Ferguson's mind as she watched her friend walk down the aisle with the future king. Diana, meanwhile, was thrust abruptly into the world of royalty, a world which over the years she'd glimpsed from outside the palace walls.
This way, please, ma'am.
Once inside those walls, she would have to learn the job of being a princess, step by step.
Your Highness.
Would you like to have a seat? We've put together a staff of experts in hair, makeup, and clothing to assist you with your choices in these areas.
How kind.
Well, working with a woman of your natural beauty is indeed an honor and a great pleasure. We would, however, like to present you with a few ideas on how we might enhance your stronger points to create an even more stunning effect. Perhaps we should begin with your hair.
Yes. Now, your natural color, though quite lovely, could be darkened a shade to bring out the coloring in your eyes.
A slight brownish tint, I should think.
Well, I wouldn't go too brown. It'll make her skin tones mottled.
Well, that would depend on the color of her eye makeup, wouldn't you think?
Perhaps. Of course, I would like to shape her hair quite differently, which would give a striking accent to her coloring.
Are you suggesting a sculptured look?
Nothing overly done, but something with a classical feel, parted on the side and swept back sort of effect. With her height be quite stunning.
She was taught everything, from how to put her eyeliner on to how to get out of a car.
Now, you must not wave while you're still in the car. It looks bad from the outside. You wait until your detective opens the door. Now here comes the tricky part. Getting out wearing a short skirt. Watch me, please. Legs go out first in a nice, even motion, bending both knees toward the rear of the car. Then ease yourself out in a smooth and continuous motion like this. Now, why don't you give it a try, ma'am? Knees bent just a bit and toward the rear. And remember, don't let your shoulders sag.
At school, Diana had failed all 5 of her O-level examinations. History and geography were not her strong suits.
You will be meeting representatives from the Ministry of Education of the Republic of Togo, here in West Africa, between Ghana and Benin, formerly called Dahomey. Are you familiar with this part of West Africa, ma'am?
I'm afraid not.
Well, it used to be called the Gold Coast because of its richness in minerals. Togo was colonized by the Germans, who called it Togoland, until the First World War, when it became a League of Nations mandate of the French, who were there until independence in 1960. So that French is the official language.
I see.
Will you be needing an interpreter?
An interpreter?
Yes, well, the Togolese speak French, ma'am.
Well, my French is a bit rusty, so maybe it would be a good idea to have an interpreter present.
Yes. Of course, the Prince of Wales does quite nicely in French. He'll be joining you for dinner.
But he won't be there at tea in the afternoon, will he?
No.
So perhaps we should have an interpreter there at tea.
As you like, ma'am. Now, Togo is primarily agricultural, producing manioc, coffee, and yams, with some limited mineral deposits, mostly phosphates.
4 years later, Sarah's friendship with Diana would result in the beginning of her own romance with the House of Windsor.
Yes,
Excuse me, but does Miss Sarah Ferguson live here?
she does.
But she's not in at the moment.
Would you give her this, please?
Certainly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What about this little black number?
Oh, dear. That's a bit much for luncheon, don't you think? You know that blue chiffon? Now, that one, that might be better.
Please. I'd have to spend the entire time not breathing.
Oh.
Another 2 weeks on this diet, perhaps, but not by next Tuesday.
Silly.
Oh, God, it's going to be a complete disaster. All those slim Kensington types with their couturier dresses and Italian shoes. And here's old Fergie with her Ralph Lauren off the peg look and half a stone too chubby to boot.
Nonsense. You'll be smashing.
Do you really think so?
Absolutely. Come on. Come on. Diana will be there, right?
Yes, thank God. Mind you, she looks gorgeous in everything she wears. I think she was born a size 8 and will die one as well. What about your linen suit?
Oh, it's at the cleaners. But I'm picking it up tomorrow.
Can I borrow it?
Of course. I mean, how often does one's flatmate get invited to the Queen's house party at Windsor Castle? Have you told Paddy?
Yes. He wasn't even jealous. In fact, he offered to drive me down.
He better be careful. There will be at least one eligible prince floating around.
Andrew goes out with film stars. He wouldn't be interested in me.
I wouldn't be so sure.
Alice, do you suppose that Diana could have...
I wouldn't put it past her.
Shoes. Think shoes.
Of course, we didn't have very good luck at Ascot this year, but I have high hopes of the Derby. There's a new thoroughbred we've been training who looks as if he's ready to run. Sugar?
No, thank you, ma'am.
Now, don't tell me you're on a diet as well.
I'm afraid I am.
Just like my daughter-in-law.
One has to stay trim.
I've always believed in exercise myself. So you're fond of horses, Sarah?
We always had polo ponies around because of Dad.
Of course. How was the Major?
Quite well, thank you.
You know, of course, that he used to command the Sovereign's escort.
So he told me.
I remember an amusing incident years ago during the Trooping of the Colour, some years back. We were parading on horseback in front of a rather large crowd, and your father, riding alongside me, edged a bit ahead. Well, I whispered to him loudly enough, apparently, for half the men to hear. Back a bit, Ron. They've come to see me, not you. Well then, Sarah, perhaps you care to join me for my morning ride.
That would be lovely.
We leave from the stables at 7. Diana prefers to stay in bed, isn't that right, dear?
So, how do you think it went?
Really well.
Honestly?
Yes, definitely. If she doesn't like you, she wrinkles up her nose a little bit, taps her foot. I think she's quite pleased, actually, compared to some of Andrew's other girlfriends.
Should I take that as a compliment?
Yes, of course. Do you want some advice?
Certainly.
When the photographers ask for a picture, just smile. That's what we do. We keep smiling.
Miss Ferguson, could we ask you a couple of questions?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Lovely day. We're just off for a little ride.
Miss Ferguson, are you visiting anyone in particular in Sandringham?
She's our house guest. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Say hello.
On February the 5th, Sarah made her first official appearance as a prospective member of the royal family. She accompanied Diana and the 3.5-year-old Prince William on a visit to Andrew's ship, HMS Brazen, in port for a short visit.
Just being given an official tour of the engine room.
You're both incorrigible beggars. Now, off with you. Go on. Well, it may not be caviar and pate, but it was tasty now, wasn't it?
It was delicious, Dad.
Well, I told you about the goat we cooked up during the trouble in Cyprus. I don't suppose you've come down here to listen to old war stories. God knows you've heard them all before. Well, is it true what I read in the papers about you and Prince Andrew?
There's nothing official, really.
I see. I suppose I must ask you the inevitable question now, mustn't I?
I really think I am in love with him.
You think?
It's so difficult to sort out one's feelings sometimes, what with all the publicity and what have you. I keep asking myself if I'd feel the same way if he weren't fourth in line to the throne.
I'll tell you this. Your life would be a great deal easier if he weren't. You've no idea what it's like living in that fishbowl. The press won't leave you alone. Wherever you go, whatever you do, they'll be at you.
I suppose one adjusts. Diana's been doing it for 5 years.
You're not Diana Spencer, my dear. You don't have her money or her connections. I may have played polo with the Duke of Edinburgh, but there's a world of difference between Earl Spencer and myself. Not the least of which is several £1 million and a title. Have you spoken to your mother?
I rang her last week.
What did she say?
She said I should listen to my heart.
I don't think I could improve on that advice.
Dads, it's all such a dream.